Why, hello and welcome everybody. It is Pohx again. So in a previous video, back in about beta or so, I think closed beta of Skyforge, I released a video that talked all about how to unlock classes in Skyforge. This is going to be an updated video. That video isn't necessarily incorrect, it's just a bit outdated. So I want to go ahead and kind of go over the whole process of how to unlock a class. So first off, in Skyforge, you have one of three starting classes, assuming you didn't purchase a supporter pack or a founder pack, etc. Now, even if you did purchase a supporter and a founder pack, you know, such as myself, I've got access to Knight, Alchemist, Berserker, and Gunner. You still cannot start as those classes. So even though I have these classes here, you still have to start from the beginning. So everyone starts at an equal point, no matter if you put money in the game or not. So you've got your Cryomancer, you have a Paladin, and you have a Lightbinder. You're given one of three, well, you can choose one of three classes, and each one has a following role. Lightbinder is one of the two support classes in the game. Paladin is one of the two tank classes in the game, and Cryomancer is one of the many DPS classes in this game. Now, Cryomancer has great utility as well in party play, due to the fact that Cryo, you know, being a, basically they can freeze targets and slow them down as well. And they specialize in like AoE damage. Now, before you even get here, you actually have to play a class because you won't even see this atlas, and you'll see something more like this. So this is my Cryomancer class tree. So you've got your global tree here, and you have your class tree over here. So this is the Cryomancers. Everyone's looks different. So when you first start playing, you're going to have your Cryomancer or whatever you're playing, and you're going to have to spend your sparks down here, either destruction, creation, and balance, and you're going to navigate through like this, continue on through until you hit this node here. This node is whatever class you are, path of the Gunner, path of the Paladin. In my case, it's path of the Cryomancer. Now, once you hit this point, you can no longer spend sparks of destruction, creation, or balance on your specific class. So everything onward here, all of this consumes something called sparks of cold or sparks of evolution. The reason for that is so that you cannot halt your progression. What I mean by that is your sparks of destruction, sparks of creation, and sparks of balance can now be used on the Ascension Atlas, which is unlocked once you reach this section. The minute you get this, you have access to the Ascension Atlas. This is where you'll unlock your classes. Now, an easy way to route to a class so you don't mess up is you can right-click a class, for example. So I'm going to go over to Gunner. Actually, I can't do it with Gunner. I need something I haven't unlocked. So here's Monk, and we're going to right-click and hit Find Path. Now, by hitting the Find Path key, it's going to enable the shortest route to the Monk that is accessible. What I mean by accessible is, if you look at this node right here, where is it? Right here, this node will actually block you. This is a node, this little pink one, that's required for like 30,000 plus prestige and a separate thing which I can't talk about because I don't know too much about it. But essentially, instead of coming down through here, you're forced to kind of go around due to this thing, as we'll call the cock block. And it will short you the shortest route to the Monk itself. So one thing I want to talk about as well is there's 4 classes that can be achieved in 1 week. And I believe with proper play, you can even obtain the second tier of classes, which we'll talk about in the second week. If not, you'll definitely get it in the third week. Now again, before I even go into this, when I say 1 week, I don't mean it literally takes you 1 week to unlock it. In Skyforge, you have a limitation as to how much you can earn on your resources per week. If you go press I and you go to currency, you can see you have a limit on your sparks of insight. This limit, when you first start, should be about 7,500 or so, and the spark cap will gradually increase depending on the way the publishers decide to release it, whether it's based off your prestige or based off your character creation time. I'm not 100% sure on how it works yet. There's also one other way to obtain sparks of insight that will exceed the cap, exceeding meaning it will go past it. Actually, there's 2. So the first one is if you open your bag, you can see this little item called a reliquary or reliquary. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, but this will give you sparks of destruction, creation, and balance on certain levels of opening it. These, if you read it, these resources are not counted towards your weekly limit. So by bumping up your prestige, you could potentially bypass your cap and get your classes. The last way to do it is when you're running your dungeons on the world map, and say you have 27 sparks left until you're finished for that week, and you run a dungeon that gives you 1500 sparks. It'll subtract the sparks from next week from your limit, meaning you could technically temporarily override your cap if you really needed to. So those are two other ways. So let's talk about what classes you can obtain on week 1. And again, by week 1, I just mean within your limit of sparks. It took me less than 6 hours to cap my limit on sparks. Most people will take 3-4 days, but I'm just giving the 6 hour as an example of how long it could take someone if they really efficiently played the game. Now granted, when you're first starting, you're not going to be clearing as fast as my character, so it'll probably take you about 24 hours. But again, 24 hours is not 1 week. But when I say 24 hours, that means that in 2 weeks would be 48 hours, and 3 weeks would be 72 hours. 72 hours and 3 weeks are, two completely different numbers. So, the 4 classes that are unlockable on week 1 would be Necromancer, Archer, Slayer, and Kinetic. With each class, I'll give you a little overrun of each class. Necromancer typically is, I want to say, a little bit below the damage scale from DPS classes. For the most part, I could be wrong here. However, Necromancer has great sustain. I believe it's the only class with a self-heal, with the exclusion of, I believe Alchemist has a PB AoE heal, or like their ult or something as a heal. I don't remember, but I believe this is the only class with legitimate sustain on health. And they do something with summons, not too much though. And they also have like a Lich form, which is really cool. Archer is a burst slash sustain damage class. They're very fair, assuming you play them properly. Slayer is a really good PvP class, also has semi-good burst. I don't know too much about them, but they're kind of a hybrid. They can go melee and ranged. And then we have Kinetic, who, from what I was told, Kinetic and Berserker have the highest burst damage currently in the game. So, next up, we're going to go into characters that will take you 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how you navigate yourself. We have the Witch, which is the class I'm going for. I'm right next to Witch, which is a damage over time character. Specializes in, of course, damage over time. She has a fear, she has a slow, she has 2 stances she switches between. She dots in one stance and switches stances, explodes the dot. Does some pretty cool stuff. She also has one of the longest range dashes in the game. I think Monk beats her in water form, I think. Then we've got Berserker, which is basically a powerhouse, goes in, does tons of damage, has great burst, has really good sustain. Sustain because they have some type of, I don't know if it's they can't die or they have a heal. They have something, I forgot exactly what it is. In this state, they feel no pain and heal wounds on their own. They do something, but they're very strong classes right now. And then we have Knight. Knight kind of feels like an upgraded Paladin. It doesn't mean that Paladin's bad by any means, but from what I've seen, Knights are just so good in everything they do. It seems like they deal more damage than a Pally. Their ulti is much better than a Pally. It's reincarnation, basically. So they're just really, really, really insane tanks. And that does not mean that Pally is bad by any means. I don't have enough, knowledge on the game, and I don't want to skew your guys' thoughts on this. I'm just telling you what I've noticed so far. But the game has only been out for like 10 days, so I only have so much information, Just trying to give you guys a little general roundup. But Knight is the other tank class. Now, navigating towards the left of the tree, we have the Alchemist, which is the other support class. I believe Lightbinder is more defensive and Alchemist is more offensive. That's not to say Lightbinder still has offensive buffs. I'm not exactly sure on how Alchemist works, but I do believe they have a damage steroid as well, and they have, I think, an AoE heal. Next up, we have Gunner. From what people told me, this is one of the weakest classes right now. I would disagree. I think Gunners are pretty cool. They've got decent sustain. They don't have too good of burst, but they're also one of the few classes with legitimate teleports. They can basically throw down a mine and then warp to that mine and then warp back to the location. Gunners have 3 stances. They have their machine gun. When their machine gun overheats, they flip it out. They basically hit a keybind, it swaps, and then they start shooting out plasma. By basically, the plasma is like the heat, and then when the heat extinguishes, then you switch back to machine gun mode. And then they have another one, which is Mortars. I don't know exactly how that one works. And last, actually I lied. I think people said Monk is currently the I guess least favorite class for PvE content. Monks are really cool. I played Monk for the first time today. They were a lot of fun. Monks utilize 3 stances. You have Water stance, Earth stance, and Water, Earth. Wait, I guess you have 4 stances. Water, Earth, Air, and Fire, I think. Does it say? They can also... Well, I don't remember. I think it's 4. It's 3 or 4. I don't remember. Each stance kind of contributes something else. Basically, when you swap stances, your left and right click change, and you get to activate one ability on your bar. And they're really cool the way their synergy works. Definitely a fun class. So that's kind of the class rundown. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, just to confirm as to how you actually unlock the class, all you need to do is right-click on the class, hit Find Path, navigate your way through, click it, and obtain it. I guess one other thing I can go over is the currency or resource that is required to unlock the class itself. I'll show you what that is. If you go to your currency, actually you can see mine right here, or skills, abilities. You can see I have 2,000 of them. There's Sparks of Transformation. They can be obtained by completing certain adventures, by completing the same quests in open areas again, meaning regions. If you've run a region area before, you can run it again to obtain these. Collecting trophies from enemies after obtaining all ether crystals, in place of other rewards when you hit the weekly limit, in exchange for credits in the market when you purchase a set of Sparks of Transformation. They're not difficult to obtain at all. They're also used for respecking as well. So, I hope that helps you guys out. You know, all the classes are pretty good, so, you know, feel free to pick what you want. And one other thing to take note of is if you don't hit your weekly limit, it's okay. Your stuff will override to the next week. So if you made your character and you didn't play it at all till next week, you should have double the stuff, basically, of what you can obtain and achieve. So I actually like it. I know a lot of people dislike the way it works because they're like, oh, well, I can't play the class I want for, you know, 3 weeks. That's kind of silly. And, you know, I'm a pretty hardcore kind of guy. And I've played a lot of Final Fantasy back then. I haven't played Ragnarok specifically, but I've played games with the style of it where you have a job class. And I just think of the first 3 classes as like your novice classes. Granted, they're still fine. They're great. You know, they're up to par with the other ones. But you really get to learn the game with them and then pick up another class. And I guess one other thing I'm sorry to go into, just to make sure so you guys don't feel you're wasting time, is when you play a class, like say my Cryomancer, for example, right? Every stat you pick up here is global to all of your characters. So if I pick up, you know, this stamina node and this stamina node here, all of this is going to benefit my future classes. But the really cool thing that works is after you max out the entire class, if you go to your skills, right, and you go to symbols, you unlock 2 symbol slots for completing a class, which means you get all the talents, and you get a class-specific talent that can be used on any class. Some of these are pretty insane. So, like, I'll go over the Paladins, for example. This is worded incorrectly, so I'm gonna read it the correct way. Incoming damage is completely absorbed if it hits for more than 10% of your maximum health. The character also becomes immune to all damage and negative effects for 4 seconds. Resets out of combat. In combat, cannot be activated within, you know, a 70-second period. It's pretty crazy, man. Like, it's pretty nuts on how strong it is. We'll go over another one. Lightbinder. When the character is not in combat, they gain a shield that absorbs damage equal to 5% of the character's maximum health, can stack up to 3 times. This shield can be restored during combat if the character takes no damage for 6 seconds. Berserker, which is Frenzy. The cooldown of the Thirst, etc. is reduced by 15 seconds, but for other classes, when taking damage, an effect can be activated that increases your damage by 20% for 8 seconds. The lower your health, the higher the chance to activate it. Archer. Damage dealt to enemies with more than 50% health is increased by 15%. This is Slayer. Critical hit chance is increased by 7% if the character has not been the direct target of any hostile spells for 5 seconds. Ghostly Viper, which is a Necromancer. Using offensive abilities in combat has a certain chance to summon a Ghostly Viper that will fight on the character's side for 20 seconds. This is, I believe, what are they called? Kinetic. Using Impulse Charge increases the character's damage by 12% for 6 seconds. Impulse Charge basically comes up every 10 seconds or so. Gunner. If the character is in combat and does not move for 5 seconds, they are surrounded by 3 drone sentries. If there is an opponent in a 9-yard radius, a drone flies up to them and explodes, dealing a set amount of damage and slowing them down by 75% for 5 seconds. Another group of drones may appear no sooner than 20 seconds after the previous group's attack. The drones will disappear if the enemy player moves more than 8 yards away from them. This would be Knight. Duration of the control effects used against the character is reduced by 15%. If the character's health drops below 50%, the effect is doubled. This is Monk. Damage to stunned opponents is increased by 20%. Alchemist. When using offensive abilities, the character occasionally receives an injection, which increases damage by 15%. Lasts 10 seconds. Witch. Taint inflicts 25% more damage. Any other class. The character's attacks may place an effect on the opponent that inflicts a set amount of damage every second for 6 seconds. I don't know. I think that's it. I think that is all of them. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this was educational and helped you guys out a bit. If you guys have any questions, more than welcome. Feel free to drop them down in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Also, if you guys enjoyed it, feel free to, hit that follow button, hit that sub button if you guys like. And just note that I stream daily on twitch.tv/Pohx, where I stream Skyforge and a numerous amount of other games as well. But in this theme, currently, I'm mainly streaming Skyforge. So again, hope you guys had a wonderful time. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful day. I can't find the stop button.